What are the special qualities of the compost bin?
Well, the compost bin, I built these out of some cheap lumber, and it's about 3 feet wide, 3 feet long, and about 3 feet deep. And that's probably about the right size. Some people put a pallet on the bottom, but you don't need to at all. It's handy to have a front gate on it, so as the compost gets low, you can get in here to either get it or shovel it out. It doesn't need to be pretty. It can be a little dilapidated, as you can see, but the only thing it has to do is hold material. So compost bins are easy. Old lumber,
So I heard there are two different types of compost, hot and cold. Can you tell me the differences of the two?
Sure. So hot composting happens when you mix freshly cut grass with leaves, and as the grass decays it gives off heat. It's an exothermic reaction, and a hot compost pile will heat up to about 130, 150 degrees. A cold compost pile, which is what this is, typically happens over the winter, and the way that happened here was we broke down the garden, put all kinds of leafy stuff in here, old tomato plants and old vines and old raspberry plants, and then put all the fall leaves in here, and it was probably up overflowing to this point, and then I just left it for the winter. And as the winter rain and snow came, it just got more and more compact, and now it's about, it went from up here to up here. But what happens is, along about late winter, early spring, all the bugs start crawling into it. And having bugs in your cold compost pile is really good, because, especially worms, because they add nutrients to it. So you can see a worm in there. I just picked this thing up and out. There's all kinds of bugs in there, and they'll eat all the nutrients, or they'll eat all the carbon and nitrogen matter in here and convert it into nutrients that the plants use. Let's look at the hot compost pile. That's over here. This started this spring with my first cut of grass. I mixed grass and leaves, and as the grass decays, it gets hot. And if you reach down into the bottom of this, it's kind of warm, and it's too warm for bugs. So it's still composting, but it's doing it through heat. And this will probably be ready for composting in about another 4 to 6 weeks. So hot composting produces compost faster than cold compost. But cold compost has lots of good bugs in it. So that's the difference between the two. If you can wait, use cold composting, but hot composting is more fun.
So what do you put in your compost pile?
Well, things you could put in your compost pile are grass and leaves are great starters. The other thing you can put in is food scraps from the kitchen table. Now, we have this bucket that we keep in the house, and anytime we have food scraps, we put them in the bucket, and then we carry the bucket out to the compost pile. Here's an old cucumber that's too ripe. There's eggshells in here. There's like an old pear core. There's coffee grounds along with the filter. So you can open up the compost pile and stick it in. If it's hot composting, the heat will cook it and break it down. If you put it in the cold compost pile, the bugs will eat it. So that's what you can put in your compost pile.
What do you know, what do you not put in your compost pile?
Things not to put in your compost pile. Usually any leaves that are shiny, like ivy leaves, because they don't break down. Pine needles take a long time to break down. Food that you don't want to put in your compost pile are dairy products, meat, cooked vegetables because typically they have butter, or salad vegetables because they might have some oil on it. So those are the types of things you don't want to put in your compost pile.
What does the final product of composting look like?
Well, when it starts to look like this, it's probably done, and it's kind of fine. It's a little bit clumpy in spots, but it breaks right up. You can still see little bits of leaves in there, and that's okay. But when you spread it on your garden, what it does is it does two things. It provides valuable nutrients to the garden, and it also holds the water, almost like a sponge. So that's the benefits of the compost. Plus, it's a great way to get rid of leaves and grass.